Whenever she's ready.
Just press play when Coach Wycombe says go. Okay. Is
All right.
it recording already?
Go. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Something a lot of high schoolers have is this piece of jewelry called a class ring. And this ring is supposed to embody everything about that person's high school experience. So of course, my ring has a French horn on it to represent band. It has the school colors. It has my graduation year. But my favorite thing on this class ring is actually the part that no one sees. And that's the engraving on the inside that says, live your dreams. And to me, these 3 words really embody my ISM experience in high school. Because ISM has taught me more than anything else to dare to live the life that I had dreamed for myself. To go forward and make my dreams come true. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Hello everyone, my name is Katie Brock, and my topic of study in the Independent Study and Mentorship Program is zoological medicine. So what is zoological medicine? Well, the textbook definition is a subspecialty of veterinary medicine, and it addresses the care of zoo animals, free-range and wildlife species, aquatic animals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians, as well as some non-domestic companion animals. However, the basic way to say it is it's just being a zoo veterinarian. So what do veterinarians do? Veterinarians are very similar to human doctors, and they perform a lot of similar tasks, such as diagnosing diseases, they treat illnesses, they help keep animals healthy by providing preventative care. This is giving them their medicine and vaccinations to prevent them from getting sick. They perform surgery as well as some other various medical procedures, and they also prescribe medication. And there are also many different kinds of veterinarians. So the most standard and the one you probably think of when you hear the word veterinarian is small animal. And these are going to be the vets that work with your dogs and your cats. There are also large animal vets, which this term is kind of deceptive because when you hear the word large animal, you probably think of, elephants and giraffes. But it's actually referring to mainly farm animals and livestock, such as your cows, your goats, things of that nature. You also have zoo animals, and this is what I'm doing. This is your lions, your tigers, and your bears. You have an equine veterinarian, and they work pretty much solely with horses. You have exotic animal veterinarians, and these are a little tricky. They typically work in small animal hospitals, but they work with animals that are exotic pets, like iguanas, snakes, parakeets, animals of that nature. And then you also have lab animal veterinarians, and these are veterinarians that work in areas of scientific procedures, and they just make sure the animals are healthy when all these examinations are taking place, all these experiments, and then make sure they were treated in a humane way. So while there are many different kinds of veterinarians, they all have to have certain base characteristics in common to be successful. One of them is they need to be able to manage their time. For small animal, this is important because you have a lot of clients coming in, and you have to be able to manage their time slots. For zoo, it's important because you have this giant landscape of different animals, and you have to be able to manage all the different problems and all the different sectors of the exhibits. You have to enjoy math and science because if you're being a vet, you're working a lot with organic chemistry, you're working with advanced biology and anatomy. You have to be able to communicate effectively because you're working with a ton of people. I have to know almost all the zookeepers in the zoo so that I can be talking with them about their animals. I need to know the different curators of the exhibits. And you also have all the different veterinary technicians and veterinarians that work with you in the vet hospital. You have to be able to deal with loss and emotions. And this is something that you really need to be able to have in any sort of medical field because the reality is animals as well as humans, they do pass away sometimes. And so you need to be able to handle that, compartmentalize that, so it doesn't affect how you handle the procedure. You have to enjoy learning and working hard. You have to have good listening skills because these animals cannot talk for themselves. So you have to be able to communicate with either clients in the small animal practice or with zookeepers to figure out what some of their symptoms are so you can better diagnose them. You also have to be compassionate because whether it's a client or a keeper, they grow very close with their animals, and you have to be able to walk them through what you're doing with them so that they understand. As far as educational requirements, to be a veterinarian, you start out with a 4-year undergraduate program, and you typically major in something such as biomedical science, animal science, or zoology. And from there, typically your junior or senior year of your undergraduate, you apply to different veterinary schools. And this is a graduate program, which at the end you graduate with your DVM, which is your Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. And this is just what makes you a doctor. From graduate school, you have the option of optional internships and residencies, which are typically suggested because they give you some extra experience before you try and apply for these highly coveted jobs. But you can also pursue this cool thing called board certification. And this is something my mentor has. And this is pretty much the most detailed test you could ever take in your entire life. It asks you questions as specific as, what is the anesthetic protocol on this one article, when there are hundreds upon hundreds of articles that are in the literature right now. And my mentor actually passed that on his first try, so that kind of shows just how much of a genius he is. So since this class is independent study and mentorship is a huge part of what we do. And the first step of the mentorship process is the informational interview stage. And for my interviews, I first off met with Dr. Rebecca Block, and she is the Associate Veterinarian for Fossil Rim Wildlife Center. And a lot of what we talked about was about the different species of hoof stock, which is like gazelles and antelopes, because this is what the majority of the collection is at Fossil Rim. My next interview was with Dr. Anna Jane Marler, and she is the Associate Veterinarian for the Fort Worth Zoo. And we actually talked about some things that you can do with the DVM just besides being a veterinarian. So we talked more about the research side of zoological medicine and how it's becoming an erupting field with animals becoming kind of the gateway to our knowledge of diseases and our knowledge of pathology. I also had an interview with Dr. Jan Rains, and she is the Associate Veterinarian for the Dallas Zoo. And on this interview, we talked a lot about aquarium medicine because Dr. Rains, like Dr. Bonner, was a head veterinarian at the Dallas World Aquarium. But we also talked a lot about just general stuff I need to know to be successful in college. And then my final interview, which I think was one of the most fun, was with Miss Carrie Slipka, and she's the head nutritionist for the Dallas Zoo. And she gave me a tour of the entire dietary facility, and I got to see all the different animals' diets being prepared. I got to see the mealworms and crickets, and she even took me into the meat refrigerator, so I got to see all the different dead mice that they feed to some of the birds. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And so after the informational interviews, you get to choose the person that you think exhibited the most knowledge and passion in our field, as well as the person who showed the most desire to help you learn. And so my mentor is Dr. Chris Bonner, and he is the Senior Staff Veterinarian and Head of the Animal Health Department for the Dallas Zoo and Children's Aquarium at Fair Park. He is a graduate of Harvard University, which is where he got his undergraduate, and he had focuses in biology and chemistry. He also went to the University of Pennsylvania, which is where he got his VMD, which stands for Veterinae Medicinae Doctoris, which is the same thing as a DVM, but UPenn being an Ivy League school, they still give out their degrees in Latin. He's also a member of the American College of Zoological Medicine. This is his board certification. And he's also a member of multiple professional affiliations, which you can read if you read his mentor biography page. And so with this mentorship side of this program, after I found my mentor, I went on, probably at this point, it's probably about 15 different mentor visits, because he's been my mentor for several months now. But I wanted to take this time to talk to you about a few of my favorites. And one of my favorites was our visit to the Perot Museum, which is this giant natural science museum that's in Dallas. And he gave me a tour of the Animals Inside Out exhibit. Have any of you ever heard of the Humans Inside Out exhibit? You have? Well, basically what they do is they preserve these animals' dead bodies so that you can see the different anatomical structures. And it's insanely cool because it really allows you to see real structures. It's really hard to preserve them. So in this first picture, you can actually see Dr. Bonner, who is my mentor, and he's giving a webcam lecture to some students about the different anatomy of the giraffe you see in the background, and he's also answering questions about his jaw. And if you look at the giraffe, you can see the musculature and the different parts of the skeletal system. And this actually isn't one giraffe. It's 3 different giraffes that were put together to make this whole one, because that's how they had to do it in order to get the right parts of the giraffe. And then if you look to the right, you can see the giraffe's heart, which is 17 times larger than the human heart. And this is the preserved insides of the digestive system of a camel. So if you look, you can kind of see the different intestines and different chambers of the stomach. And this one's kind of hard to see with the lighting, but this is actually one of the cooler things that I think the exhibit does. This is the preserved circulatory system of an ostrich. So all the different red squiggly lines you're seeing are all the different capillaries and vessels. One of the other really cool visits that we did was an elephant exam on these two girls named Kamba and Congo. And this first picture that you're seeing is Congo, and she's having her ocular examination. So you can see Dr. Bonner is having a flashlight. Well, not flashlight, he has the ophthalmoscope, and he's looking at the different vein structures and patterns in her eye to make sure they're healthy. And if you look to the right, you can kind of see two of the main keepers, which really help participate in these wellness examinations, as you can see sort of in this video. So what you're basically seeing here is you're seeing Dr. Bonner monitor heart rate with stethoscope through the veins that are going through her trunk. But what you also see to the left here, you see that giant rod coming from the keeper. That's part of what they use to train the animals to come so close up to the different bars of the exhibit so that Dr. Bonner can look at them, because elephants are obviously very heavy and very huge, and so they can be dangerous. And the training just helps Dr. Bonner see what he needs to see, and it also helps preserve the elephant's safety. This is another really cool part, because the keeper's telling Kamba to open her mouth. So you're opening her mouth and bringing her trunk and her entire mouth up to the bars so that Dr. Bonner can look inside and make sure she doesn't have any mouth ulcers and that her teeth are okay. And this is a really cool part of the examination. And so while we do have a very big portion of our program as the mentorship, we also have a good part of what we do as the independent study. And we have two major projects we do throughout the year. And the first one is called Original Work. And this is a very research-intensive project. And since I'm doing zoological medicine, I thought, what's better to research than the animals I'm going to be working with? So my original work is a compilation of all the species that are on exhibit at the Dallas Zoo. And if you look in there, I have a picture of every individual species. I have their name, their scientific name, which is their taxonomy. I have a brief profile, which is where I have some fun facts. I have their diet, which is whether they're herbivore, omnivore, carnivore, piscivore, etc. I have a general lifespan, and this can vary between whether in the wild or captivity. I also have their conservation status under the IUCN, and this is basically just saying whether they're of least concern, whether they're vulnerable, or whether they're critically endangered. And then they also have their native region. And basically what this means is the Galapagos tortoise is indigenous to the Galapagos Islands, and so that's basically what I want to say. And the other part of my original work was talking about the different diseases that these animals can procure in captivity, because it's a major part of what I'm going to be doing. I have to understand the diseases to know how to treat them. So under the disease portion, you can read what the name of the disease is, the groups it affects, its different symptoms, its severity, and finally its forms of treatment. I wanted to kind of conclude after my reflection of this past semester by talking about what some of my goals are for my future. Next year, I hope to be attending Texas A&M University, where I'm going to be double majoring in biomedical science and zoology. And after that, I plan to attend vet school, hopefully at A&M, but I am also keeping my options open with Kansas State, UC Davis, and the University of Pennsylvania. And eventually, I would really like to have my board certification, because this is basically what says that you are an expert in your field and what you do, because you have to have supreme knowledge of veterinary medicine in order to be board certified. We don't really have much time for that, but if you have any questions, feel free to approach me after the speech, and I'll be more than happy to answer them for you. And I wanted to conclude just by thanking you all for listening, and I wanted to challenge you, just like Ralph Waldo Emerson challenged me, to keep pursuing your dreams and your passions, and to make your dreams come true.